Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast. The podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. With me today is a good friend. It is Deb Johnstone. This is her fourth appearance being on the podcast. She was back on episode 89 when I introduced Deb was my mindset coach, and still is my mindset coach, which I think it's coming up almost a decade, Deb, in case you're wondering. Surprised you've worked with me that long. And you're also on episode 171 and 266. So Deb owns a business called Transformational Pathways Australia. What is your website address for that, Deb?
It's actually www.debjohnston.com.au.
Okay. So anyway, Deb, welcome back to Podiatry Legends. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks for having me back.
Feels like we only spoke the other day. Yeah, for the fourth time. And it feels like we only spoke yesterday, which I think we did only speak yesterday. So today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. And this came about by a conversation that you and I had a couple of months ago. And I said, a lot of podiatrists refer to other podiatrists sometimes as being a little bit uninspired. They sometimes seem like zombies, that everyone just keeps following the same path, and they're a little boring. And what we worked out when we were talking is that is not really the case.
No.
We have come up with a whole new theory on this.
Let's make this really clear as well, is that not all podiatrists are the same.
No.
Because human behaviour is really complex and there's always exceptions to the general rule. So not all podiatrists actually present that way, but some of them do, and a lot of them do, and it's not true.
It's not true.
No, it's not true.
But we also figured out it's in the healthcare profession in general, and we'd be talking podiatry, physiotherapy, optometry, dentistry, the whole health industry would pretty much, what we're about to talk about, would cover a lot of people in the profession, in all those different professions.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely would. This, what I call energetic type or behaviour type, is through a lot of the health industry. And that's a good thing. We want them in the health industry because they're quite exact, they're quite precise. They really care about people, and they make sure that they, as you were saying, they do the same thing over and over again. And they make sure that they follow the rules. It's really important.
Yeah, and that was how the conversation between you and I came about, was because I said, there's certain people, it wouldn't matter, because you've got the registration board rules, ARPA rules, and every country would have their own registration rules, but then you can have an association which you don't have to be a member of, and they have rules.
Yeah. And
there's certain podiatrists that it wouldn't matter what the association said. If they said this is the rule, they will just follow it. They won't even question it because that is the rule. It's just the way it's supposed to be done. Then you can have other people who we have the registration rules, which we know must follow. But when we sometimes see association rules, we go, I've got to question that. And we tend to associate with people that are similar to ourselves in our thinking. And I think that's why we look at each other a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, not all podiatrists have this particular behaviour type. You, for instance, don't, right? You don't. And a few of my other clients that I've worked with who are podiatrists don't, right?
Yeah.
But the majority do, not just the rules, but the systems. They really love following systems. And when you're I'm not just talking about the rules of the industry, I'm also talking about the systems that you use to treat a patient in a certain way. If they've got a particular complaint, there's a certain system that you take them through to treat that particular complaint. And if that system isn't followed, then it doesn't always result that well for the patient. So it's great that we've got this particular behaviour type that likes being in podiatry, because we want them to be there. They're going to do a good job. They're going to make sure they do it right. They're going to make sure they're really precise about it, and they actually care about the person that they're treating as well.
But can you look at this in two different ways. Like, I love systems myself. I'm a
Mm,
mad systems person. I love following systems because I know you get a predictable outcome.
yeah.
But I also question systems if something doesn't look right. But you can have other people that can just follow a system because there's an outcome, but will also never question anything. So where's the personality coming where you tend to question things a little bit more?
That's yours. That's yours. That's where your particular type comes in, right? Is you do question it, you do challenge the status quo, and that is what creates great change, right? It's
Okay.
what creates, that's what helps you find different ideas and different ways of doing things that can actually help you treat patients in a different way that are going to give them even better results. And I watched you do that when you were in your clinic, and I watch you do it in your coaching and mentoring business as well. You've got that real ideas thing happening, and you're quite driven to actually create a change around it. You question things, you try to look for a different way of doing things that they're actually going to work. And so this is where that traditional type that normally goes into podiatry, this is where they can get stuck because they're not questioning the status quo. They're not looking at better ways of doing things. They're just following the system.
Okay. So if somebody is taught something a particular way at university,
Yeah.
and it probably depends who the lecturers are at the time as well, to a certain extent. But then they get a job somewhere working for someone who also doesn't like a lot of change, just follows the same way of doing things, and they do that for a number of years. Sometimes the profession could move on, and there could be better ways of doing it.
Yeah.
But because they're so used to just following the status quo, they don't see the change.
No. And this is the thing, because that particular behavior type is quite happy to just stay with the blinkers on and just keep doing the same thing. I'm not saying there's right or wrong in this.
Yeah.
It's just what is resourceful in helping you create better outcomes for patients, in helping you create a better business, and what isn't. There's a certain amount of following systems, following different patterns of treating patients, following different ways of running your business that are important, that those systems really work. But at some stage, they don't work that well. And this is where the change makers make the difference. So like you said, there could be other podiatrists out there doing really different things and getting great results. But if you keep continuing doing the same thing over and over again, which comes naturally to you because that's the way you're wired, you're going to get left behind.
Okay. But sometimes too, if you challenge the status quo too much, you can get yourself in strife.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got to stay within the boundaries.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There has to be balance. This is a thing. So it's about, okay, so you challenge the status quo a lot. So someone with your particular personality and behavior type, you've probably had to learn to pull the reins in sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas someone who naturally follows the systems and just follows the rules maybe needs to let the reins out a little bit. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I've had somebody say to me once, I bet you wish the registration board didn't even exist. And I went, no. I said exact opposite, actually. I said, what I like about having the registration board in, there is someone that keeps us in check. I said, because if there was no registration board, it would just be, the profession would be crazy. People would be doing the crazy, and there's enough people already doing some things that are questionable. And if you didn't have somebody coming down and going, hey, you've got to just check what you're doing, then it would be out of hand. But I think at the other extent, like we said, there's other people who just accept everything that they're told, never question anything because they don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah. And so it's learning. It's just learning how to, I don't know, step out of your normal behavior from time to time, because that is what's going to create change. Whether you are a change maker and you're driven to challenge the status quo, or whether you naturally just follow the systems and follow the rules. And then maybe it's time for you to actually look up from what you're doing and see what else is going on out there as well, and start to question things as well. It really comes down to balance. And here's the thing though, is whichever behavior type you are and wherever it is that you're challenged, whether you find it difficult to do something a little bit differently, or whether you find it difficult to pull in the reins because you're challenging a little bit too much, it takes more energy to do that too.
I think when I was a younger podiatrist, I used to challenge everything, and it was very tiring. As I got older, I started realizing which battles were worth fighting and which ones were just not worth arguing with, because you thought you're probably not going to change it. But there were other things I thought, it may change over time.
Yeah.
So it can get tiring if you're trying to challenge everything.
Yeah. And also it can be a little bit draining to actually pull in the reins when you want to question something and just hold yourself back. That can be draining as well.
Yeah, I find social media at the moment like a bit of a pain in the bum, because I was listening to a podcast and I had the psychologist talking about the difference between face-to-face communication and how human beings need to interact with each other to communicate properly. But because of social media, we can all be these heroes, and there's people that can beat their chest and can be keyboard warriors, but face-to-face, that's not them. Yeah. And 90% of the communication now with other people is through keyboards.
Yes.
And we're actually really losing a connection with each other.
Yes, we are.
But we're not bonding as well as what we should.
Yeah, that's really true. That's very true. For the social media system, who initially the idea was to create more connection, because it was initially set up as a communication system for a university, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So when you think about the initial intent was to actually create more connections, it's having the opposite effect. So
I've seen Facebook groups where certain people, and they are like masters of the universe on there, and they get their chest puffs out, and they're quite rude. They'll say they're honest. I actually find them quite rude on there. And every comment they make, there's always just seems to be this little undertone. But I know if they were face to face in a group of people, they wouldn't utter half of what they say on social media. And that just concerns me for the profession long term, that you've got a lot of younger people coming through and they're scared to say things on social media because these people have been around 15, 20 years, attack them.
Yeah.
And then when they go to events, I think a lot of them get to events and they don't realise, don't worry, you're safer live because they won't say anything to you. But then I've seen those same people at a live event and you'll start talking to them and they sort of said, I don't talk too much at conferences anymore because I get attacked online. And they think they're actually going to get attacked live and go, no, you're safe live, because they won't say anything to you.
Yeah, right. Gee, that's interesting. Yeah.
And it's not just podiatry. It happens. I can talk to my brother in dentistry. He says the same thing happens. Friends in optometry, they say the same thing happens.
So they're beating their chest. I know everything. You're asking stupid questions, which is no such thing as a stupid question.
To me, what's stupid is when somebody is not sure about the answer, so they don't ask the question. And I tell people that work with me, I go, if you're not sure about something with a patient, I would rather you ask me.
Yeah.
And we resolve it than you just going off and doing something and then you do it wrong. And then we have to sort of try and fix that up. So if you're not sure of the answer, ask it.
Yeah.
But in some of the Facebook groups, someone will ask a question and then all these people are diving on there like going, oh, seriously, I can't believe you don't know this. And then they make reference to different articles and I'll go, that wasn't really what they asked for. But anyway.
That's exactly the reason why people don't ask questions, because of that kind of response. That is incredibly unresourceful behavior. And what you were saying is that when you're in clinic, I'd rather you ask me questions than do it incorrectly. And so the natural behavior type that generally goes into podiatry and a lot of other careers in health is that type that doesn't like to ask a lot of questions.
Okay.
Interesting, isn't it? They like to be seen as the expert. So asking questions makes them look like they're not the expert. Interesting.
And it's one of those things, we're in practice. It's called practice for a reason, because we are constantly in practice mode. We were always learning and no one can know everything. And I know when I've been out 5 years, once I got out 10 years, I knew I was better than what I was after 5. I knew after 20 I was better after 10, because it's just the experience of seeing patients and communicating with them. And the more patients see, the better you're going to get.
It's true. And again, that behavior type tend to feel more confident about their work and how good they are at their work after a period of time too.
So the more they do it, the better they're going to get, or the better they're going to feel about it.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting that they need to ask questions, but they're not asking them. The more they get shot down like that, the less likely they are to ask questions, even in the clinic.
Okay, so you're saying in healthcare, it's known throughout healthcare that we're not big question askers. We don't ask a lot of questions. So then
maybe of your patients, you'd be asking questions of your patients, hopefully.
But we don't ask. We're not naturally going to ask questions externally. So when people are asking questions externally, like on Facebook, if they're then shot down, then they're even less likely to ask questions in the future. Yeah,
that's right. I've seen it happen heaps and heaps of times where people don't ask questions. I've even felt that in the past myself, when I've asked a question and someone's laughed. Yeah. It just shuts you down. You don't want to ask any more questions. And really, if someone is laughing or putting down your question or laughing at you because you don't know, then you really got to ask yourself, is it really a reflection of me and my wisdom and my knowledge, or is it a complete reflection of them and their unresourceful behavior? And maybe the fact that they feel a need to prove themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I was reading a book recently and it said a lot of people that have an inferiority complex pretend they're more superior than everybody else. And they try and make out they're more superior by their actions because they feel so inferior.
That's right.
And when I read that, I went, wow, that's really strange that they actually pretend to be superior because they're inferior. But the person who doesn't feel inferior or superior will just be themselves.
Yeah.
And they never try to put people down. It's just who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Any kind of behavior like that of, oh, you mean you don't know that, or laughing at what you're asking, or it's generally a reflection of them needing to boost themselves up. That kind of behavior is generally a sign that person doesn't feel that great about themselves. And the way they feel better about themselves is by putting somebody else down. That's how they do it.
Okay, so do people also do this to try and hold a certain position within a profession or at a university, that they'll always make sure everybody knows that they're a professor of this or associate professor or a lecturer? They'll always have to bring that up in conversation so everybody knows, look, I actually hold a position of authority.
Yeah.
And that's their way of actually building themselves up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not always too, because I know some people at the universities that hold high positions who are awesome people.
Yeah.
So I'm just using that as just a generalized example.
Yeah, it can be. Like you say, not always. And like I said, we're talking generally here because there's always exceptions. But often especially with the need to prove themselves and to repeat over and over again who they are and what they've done, or in using that to put someone else down, it's generally unresourceful significance. Like they're significance seekers and they're doing it unresourcefully. And what I want to say here is this: it's not a judgment on that person either, because they may have been through some awful things in their life that have led them to behave that way.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Like I know even when I went through university, because I went to a state school, not a private school, I copped a lot of shit from people that went to private schools at the time. So when I got out, I used that as my energy to work hard.
Yeah.
But sometimes I probably used it too much. So something that was being a positive in my life, at some stages were probably a negative in my life because I was letting it affect my health and just my overall well-being until I sort of got my head around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, working hard. These are all signs: working too hard, feeling like you've got to achieve more than everybody else.
Yeah.
All of those behavior patterns are indications that there's something else going on, maybe something that's happened in your past where you've been where you've chosen to believe that you're not good enough, or you're not as good as that person, or you're not worthy, or whatever it is, can lead someone to carry out those behavior patterns continually, like you say, until you come a cropper and it affects your health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I remember going through, and there were certain people that would say certain things to you, and then you go to their house, and they'd make out that they were doing a lot better than what they were. And it's not until you get older that you reflect back and you go, actually, they weren't that great. Like where
That's
they
right.
lived and the job that their parents had, yes, they went to a great school because the parents worked hard to put them there. So I think as
Yeah.
your brain matures, you start realizing the truth of some of these things, which is great. But it's also when you'll hear some podiatrists, and I've done videos on this. I don't know if I've done a video on this one, but they'll say, "Oh, I don't care about money. I care more about my patients than making money."
Mm, mm.
And I'm going, okay, why don't you just say you're not very good at business? Like just because someone makes money doesn't mean they care less about their patients. So I think sometimes we can lie to ourselves that, yeah, I may not be good at business and I'm not making very good money, but I'm going to say that I care more about my patients
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of maybe there's more to it.
And there's also another way of looking at it too. It's like, if you really care about your patients that much, isn't it important that you make money so that you're still there to look after them?
Definitely. And that you can buy the equipment and whatever the latest thing is, and you can go to the conferences.
That's
I've seen
right.
people wear it like a badge on their chest that, look, I'm a broke podiatrist driving a Datsun 180B from 1978. And they're wearing it like a badge of honor.
Mm,
And I'm thinking, I don't think it does anything for the profession. When you've
mm.
got students or you got young kids looking at, oh, I'm thinking about being a podiatrist. And then the podiatrist they meet is broke, been doing it 20 years, driving an old car. And they say, oh, no, I don't make it because I care about my patients. And they're like, oh, crap, I'm a caring person. Does that mean I'm never going to make any money?
Yeah, that's right. And, we see this a lot in the healing world, in the spiritual world as well, and in the coaching world. It's exactly the same thing. Is if you're helping people, you shouldn't be charging a lot of money for it. We hear that story a lot in the
Yeah.
coaching world, the healer world, and that's not true. It's because you need to be supported. If you really care about your patients and the people that you're helping, if you really care about them, then it's important that you're sustained, that your business is sustained, so that you can continue to provide better care for your patients. Otherwise, what's the alternative?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I remember when Jonathan Small was over here in July last year. Wow, almost a year ago. And I remember we had all the podiatrists in the room, and I drew a map of Australia. Then everyone had to say what town they were from, and I had to mark it on the map. But then we had to write what their initial consultation was for a specific service. So I wrote it down. And the difference between what one person was charging another, I think it was almost like a $60 to $70 difference for this
Wow.
one particular service. And prior to that, we had done it online once before, and we had an online whiteboard, and you had to mark where you were. You didn't say the fee, you just said whether you thought you were too cheap or too expensive.
Yeah.
And then marked where you thought you were. It was surprising how some people marked themselves as being too expensive, and another person marked themselves as too cheap. And the person who was too cheap was charging $30 more than the one who said they were too
It's
expensive.
really interesting, isn't it? It's perception.
Yeah, and when everybody saw that, nearly everybody was just saying, the ones who were charging like a good amount, who said they were too cheap, started to feel better about themselves, thinking,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm not too cheap. And some ones who thought they were too expensive realised, I need to put my fees up.
Yeah.
I'm not too expensive at all.
This is why it's important to do those kinds of classes, those types of workshops. I know you've got an event coming up as well. That's why it's important to do those types of things.
Which is sold out. My reboot's
It's
sold out, which is fantastic. The next one will be in 2025. So I'll keep an eye out for that one. But also got Dave Free's event coming up on the 24th of August, Saturday 24th. Going to be at Cairns. Crystal Brook Bailey is where we're going to be holding it.
Fantastic.
And soon, by the time people are listening to this, the details should be on my website, tysonfranklin.com. Click on events. And I tell you right now, if you really understood who Dave Freeze is, you would walk over broken glass to be at that one-day event, because it will change your life. And you came the last time you came to Cairns back in 2018, Deb.
And that was 2018. That was 6 years ago. So he doesn't come very often. And that event was incredible. My partner went with me as well. And absolutely incredible. I mean, I've been a coach now or working in the coaching industry for almost 12 years now, I think. And I learned heaps of stuff from him that I didn't know. So, even if you've done personal and professional development courses, workshops before, you're going to learn a lot more from Dave. He's got a totally different way of doing things. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I was taking heaps and heaps of notes the whole time I was there.
Yeah, well, I was listening to a podcast only today of his. I was driving the car and an old podcast came up, one of my original ones that I must have done in 2017. And one of the things we said on that podcast, I said on the podcast, after you listen to this podcast, you should go back and listen to this episode every 3 to 6 months, because you'll pick up something new every time.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff I picked up, I haven't listened to it for a little while. The amount of stuff I picked up from it, I went, I need to listen to this podcast every 3 to 6 months, because we were talking about just there what your mindset is. And I gave an example where I had read the E-Myth book.
Yeah.
And thought it was the biggest load of crap I'd ever read in my life.
You did
I hated it. I hated the book.
It's all about systems, isn't it?
Yeah, I just didn't like it, because it kept using a pie shop as an example. Didn't like the book. Anyway, I was getting a plane one day going to Sydney. It was actually a podiatry conference. And I let the book gods decide what book I was going to read. So I went through the bookshelf, closed my eyes, waved my hands about, put it in, pulled out a book, and it was a bloody E-Myth.
Obviously, something you missed.
I said, if the book gods want me to read this, I'm going to read it. So I did, and I read it on the plane. One of the best books I'd ever read. And probably 4 years had passed from the first time I reading it to the second time.
Yeah.
So it was funny. And what that just reminded me of was when I listened to Dave in 2017. Now I've known Dave now for another 7 or so years since then. I go to his event in Arizona every single year, and I can't wait for him to come to Cairns to hear what he has to say. Because I hear him talk all the time, and every time he talks, I hear something different, something new that just changes my life in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be a brilliant event. And I know that I remember you had a full house when he came last time. And I think you booked up really quickly for that event as well. And everybody absolutely loved it. I do remember that. I remember everybody saying how much they loved it.
Well, it's one of the few times you go to an event, you see the person who's doing the filming and the camera work bouncing off the walls. Normally they're so busy working, they're not really paying attention. But Paul first afterwards just go, bloody hell, he was brilliant. That was just absolutely fantastic. and he was being paid to be there to actually do some work.
He was doing work and he wanted to make notes and he couldn't.
He had the recording. He can go back and listen to it later. But yeah, it is one of the things. So anyone listening to this, go to my website, tysonfranklin.com, click on events. There will be some details there. Last time, I think we had 42 people come along to it. But this time, I'm looking at a smaller room. I'm thinking of only having about 20.
Yeah.
Because I want to actually target podiatrists to get podiatrists there. So I'm going to give them a week's head start, a week or two's head start. And if they haven't booked them, then I'll just open up the Cairns and I know it'll just sell out. Yeah. So if you're thinking about, if you've heard me talk about Dave, just book it. Book the room out. And therefore, then if I need a second room, I can go and get one. Yeah,
you need to book quick before he opens it up to Cairns, because as soon as that happens, it'll book straight away.
I know, I'm not telling anyone yet. So back onto our subject of when we're talking about podiatrists aren't really boring. And I'd written something because whenever you and I talk, every couple of weeks, I write it down in my brain book. And I actually have it. And when we were talking about this, it was the 29th of April this year. And you said that most podiatrists love stability and compliance because that's their comfort zone.
Yes. Yeah. That's their comfort zone. And this is the thing. It's like, that'll get you so far. And it's great because it's got you to where you are now. by being stable with what you're doing, by being compliant, by following the rules, all of those things, it's got you to where you are now. But if you want to grow, if you want your business to expand, then you've got to step out of that comfort area, because that's the only way to do it. Because it's, personally for me, I've had to really step out of my comfort area to build my business. And you cannot achieve what someone else is achieving outside of your comfort zone unless you join them, unless you jump outside of it.
Yeah, and I have heard some people say, "Oh, I don't believe in comfort zones."
Oh.
And I'm like, "Oh." Like my comfort zone, like to be honest, my comfort zone is not getting up and talking in front of people. To actually get up in front of a group of people, I don't care if it's even 5 people, I'm not really comfortable doing it. I would much rather just be sitting here and let somebody else do it.
Yeah.
However, I know that every time I get up and I do it and you finish, you feel so good for doing it.
Yeah.
Because it pushed you out of your comfort zone. And every time I've been pushed out of my comfort zone, even if I've failed, I still feel good that I gave it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was only like 2 months ago, whatever it was. I remember I said, yeah, I went and jumped in the Muay Thai ring for the first time. Yeah, at 57 years of age, I thought, I was going to jump in there and in the ring and see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? Well, a lot, so you can find out. But I went in there, we did the fight, the other guy threw the towel in, thank God, and we walked out of there, but we both walked out of there just going, that was so good. I mean, that was so much out of my comfort zone to do that. And last weekend they had more fights, and I convinced the guy, no, go in there, you'll love it. You can't get hurt. He got his nose broken in the first 15 seconds.
And this is the reason people don't like stepping out of their comfort zone, right? It's a fear of getting hurt, not just physical, though.
Yeah, but he was still glad that he did it. Because we said that to him again. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose when you get in there. The thing is just, it's doing something that makes you feel so uncomfortable and to the point of almost being sick. But when you do it, win, lose, or draw, you feel better for it. That's how you know you got out of your comfort zone. Just that high you get afterwards.
You get a real high. And like some of us like to take big leaps out of our comfort zone, and yet some of us don't like the big leap. But that doesn't mean you can't do something that's unfamiliar. It just might mean that the steps need to be smaller. And as the energetic type that we were talking about that generally attracts, that podiatry generally attracts, is that type that prefers the smaller steps. So you can take the smaller steps and still step out of your comfort zone. I can't believe someone said they don't believe in the comfort zone.
I know.
That's incredible.
I'll tell you off air who it was too. When I tell you, you'll go, seriously?
That's interesting, because anything that we do that we feel unfamiliar around is outside of our comfort zone. So anything that we are going to do that's new, we've never done it before, or we haven't done anything like it before, it's unfamiliar, it's outside of the comfort zone. And quite often when we are looking at doing something like that, we feel doubtful. It's normal. You and I, we've been stepping out of our comfort zone for God knows how many years, but you still feel doubtful. You still feel some of that fear, don't you?
Well, it's funny, but even exercise, if you are comfortable sitting on your couch in the afternoon, you get over where, oh, I'm too tired to exercise. So instead you'll have a drink and more food than you need. You have a snack before you have dinner, then a snack afterwards. You slowly put weight on. But at some point, you know that you've got to exercise. But just doing that, to me, is actually outside your comfort zone. And then it's trying to pick what exercise you're going to do. If you're going to go to the gym for the first time, you're stepping out of your comfort zone. If you're going to join a running group or go to a Muay Thai gym or anything, I think the more you do it, though, you start actually having a bit of fun. You get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And that's the thing. You still feel a bit nervous. You still feel a bit doubtful. But the way you handle that changes, because that actually begins to feel familiar, that feeling of doubt and fear. It's just like, oh, yeah, here it is again. Obviously, I'm just about to do something new. So it's like you take it in your stride more so than let it hold you back. Yeah, because you're so used to doing new things. I know that's definitely the case for me. And it was so challenging for me 12 years ago, before I started my coaching business, really challenging for me to do things outside of my comfort zone, not so much on a personal sense, but more on a professional sense. I found that really challenging and very nerve-wracking. I remember the first time I ran my very first workshop, it was so nerve-wracking.
Oh, it is. It
Yeah.
still is. I still find
Yeah.
the beginning part of a workshop, just because you don't know who's going to be there. Like, you know the names, you know half the group, but you don't know the other half.
Yeah.
And in your head, you go, oh, what if I get someone who is crazy? How do I handle a crazy person for 2 days? And you get all these really silly thoughts that go in your head that can almost get you to the point of thinking, you know what, maybe I shouldn't even do the workshop. But then every time you do it, whether it's online or live, when it's finished, you go, how good was that group?
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
Yeah, that's right.
So I got this perfect example of another thing where, like, I shoot a lot of short videos. Yeah, they might go for 2 minutes, some might go for 6 or 7 minutes. I've worked out that I've probably done, between the YouTube channel I have now, when I did the 365-hour challenge, and some other videos I've done, I've probably shot over 1,000 short videos between 2 and 6 minutes. And I still feel uncomfortable doing it.
Yep.
You think after 1,000, doing it 1,000 times. And I went back not so long ago. So if anyone wants a good laugh, go to my YouTube channel, Tyson E Franklin. Go way back to some of my earlier videos. The content, I think, is good, but the lighting is atrocious. Sound isn't that great. I actually had hair too. So that's how old some of the videos are. My hair really didn't look good either. But even now, after 1,000 videos, when I have to do the video that I do once a week, when I look at that camera and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is not comfortable. But when I finish it and I do the editing, I go, I'm glad that. So I feel good that I actually did it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I had a client a couple of years ago. She was launching her coaching business, and one of the things that she was tasked to do was to record a short video, and she was really not confident about it at all. So I did something that I don't do very often, and I would never do it in public.
Yeah.
I would never release this to the public now because it's hidden in my YouTube channel, but I showed her my very first video that I ever recorded 12 years ago.
Yeah, I encourage people to go back and look at my old ones.
Yeah.
And I think, look, if you look at my old ones and you look at my new ones, and you'll see the difference in them.
Yeah.
That you're probably, like, if you're really good at video, you'll probably still look at my new ones and go, actually, my new ones are exactly like watching this video now. Like if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, that I'm in the same room, but I'm planning on doing some videos external. I'm going to get outside of the office and do something, which is going to be outside my comfort zone again, because I'm going to be dealing with the environment. There's going to be people walking past, but it's all fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And taking that back to the podiatrist in the clinic, it's different, coming into contact with different modalities, all of that sort of thing, things you've probably not considered doing before, but you've seen other podiatrists using that particular method. That is out of comfort zones. It's really easy to keep doing the same thing over and over again, but why would you when there's something else out there that's going to give better results?
There's a really good example where I know podiatrists go, oh, I want to be better at this, but they're too scared to just go and do that first thing to go and learn it, or to pick up that new piece of equipment. Fear is holding them back because it's outside of the comfort zone.
Yeah. And then you can go and do a course, say like do a needling course, but then bring back that information and never use it. It's the same thing. It's like moving it from what you've learned in the course to actually performing it on a patient. Again, it's out of comfort zone because you've never actually done it on a paying patient before. It's different. Yeah.
And I remember when the first time I had a needle and I had to put it into human flesh.
Mm.
That was outside of my comfort zone because I
Yeah.
was not a drug addict or anything before I started podiatry. I'm not a drug addict now. So sticking a needle into human flesh was not something that you just naturally did. So
Yeah.
every podiatrist listening to this has stuck a needle in someone, and it wasn't something that you normally did, but you did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I think if you can do that, you can do anything.
I don't think I'll become a podiatrist.
No, because there'd be certain people that under no circumstances could they get a needle and stick it into human flesh.
No, I can't even look at when someone does it to me. So
Yeah, so I think any podiatrist that's actually done that means you stepped out of your comfort zone. Means you can do it
right.
you can do it in so many other aspects of podiatry.
That's right.
You can do it in business, just any part of your career, anything you want to do, you can just do it. And if you have questions in the profession, step out of your comfort zone and just post it
Yeah.
into the group. And if you want to join the best Facebook group for podiatrists, it is the Podiatry Business Owners Club. And you don't have to be a business owner to be part of that group. Join that group. What you do is answer 3 simple questions and I'll let you in. And if you post a question, if anybody is negative to you in any way whatsoever, I will throw them out of the group straight away. You don't have to worry about it because it is not a toxic group. And I've actually had people say to me, they can't believe, they go, it's the safest group on Facebook.
Yeah. That's so good, Tyson. You've created that community.
Because there's there's still a few silly people in there. But we post a lot of funny stuff too.
Yeah. Fun as well.
So Deb, how would you like to wrap this up? I know one thing too, you do the e-disc profiling and team training.
I do. And a lot of what we've been talking about is relative to e-disc as well. So the type that we were talking about that's generally attracted to podiatry, with some exceptions, is a particular type on the e-disc quadrant. So yeah, I do one-on-ones with e-disc. So a 2-hour session with a 20-page report, and we actually really dig deep into your energetic type, the things that you're comfortable with, the things you're uncomfortable with, and how to create change so that you can create more balance in that and start doing some of the things that you need to grow your business a little bit more or a lot more. And I also do team trainings as well, which are really helpful for teams in businesses to understand each other better so that they can communicate with each other and really work well together as a team.
Okay, so if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way of doing it?
Probably the best way is through my website. So my website is www.debjohnstone.com.au or through email success@debjohnston.com.au.
Okay, they can also find you on LinkedIn at Deb Johnson.
They can, yeah.
Okay, Deb, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think maybe just a little bit about comfort zone. I think we all need to be, no matter what profession we're in, no matter what industry we're in, it is important for us all to step out of our comfort zone, both personally and professionally, because that's what helps us to continue to grow. And our business is only going to grow when we grow.
I think that's a good point. And I want to reiterate, podiatrists aren't really boring.
They're not.
They're not.
They're not.
Even though you might find a few that you sort of go, oh, but what about them? Well, there's probably an exception to the rule. There might be 1 or 2. But I think in general, I don't think they are. Like you said, I think they are stable and compliant.
And generally introverts too. So, yeah. And so that's probably why someone would look on and think, oh, they're boring, but they don't actually really know that person.
I'm an introvert, really.
I'm
an introvert who pretends to be an extrovert.
And we also have different sides to our personality as well.
Yeah. So, okay, Deb, I want to thank you for coming back on the Podiatry Legends podcast for the 4th time, which I'm sure it won't be the last time either. And I look forward to talking again soon.
Thanks, Tyson. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Deb Johnson today, and I always enjoy having her on the podcast. I thought this was a really, really important topic because it has been mentioned a lot that podiatrists are boring, but after speaking with Deb, you sort of realise the majority of podiatrists are compliant and they do like stability, which is a good thing for our profession. It's a good thing for patients. One of the part of the conversation though that I thought was really important that I wanted to touch on again was just about social media, and sometimes there's a few negative, toxic people in some of the Facebook groups. And if you run one of those groups and you notice there's people in there who are being a little bit toxic, please pull them aside, have a bit of a word to them and tell them if they can't say something encouraging and positive, then please don't say anything at all. Because I do think, and I have had a lot of younger podiatrists say to me, they do not feel comfortable asking questions in some of those groups anymore. So please just be aware of it. Before you become a keyboard warrior and you start typing something, just think, would you say that to their face? And if you wouldn't, then please don't post it. Now, one last thing before I wrap up, just remind everybody that we did mention that Dave Freeze is going to be in Cairns on the 24th of August. Just go to my website, tysonfranklin.com, have a read through the information there. Dave's also got a short little video that we've uploaded on that page. So you go to tysonfranklin.com, click on events, scroll down, you will find it there. Dave Freeze event, the power of persuasion. You will tell you, it will be a life-changing event. Do not sit on the fence and wait too long. Okay, that's it for me this week. I want you to look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.